Yo, so I have wanted to do this for a while, and I want to break down athletic training versus bodybuilding. I always use the analogy of math. So there are different sections of math, different disciplines of math. So when someone says, I'm working on math, they don't really mean I'm just simply working on math. They could be working on algebra, they could be working on geometry, stats, trig. There's many different disciplines of math. So when I say I'm weightlifting, I don't necessarily just mean one branch of weightlifting like bodybuilding or athletic training. So when people are studying for algebra, they're not studying for geometry. They're putting their focus into algebra. If I'm in an algebra 1 or 2 class or advanced algebra, anything like that, if I go home and study algebra, learn all the equations, learn how to use my calculator for algebra, and then I go to school the next day and I take a geometry test, I'm not gonna have great success. Technically, yes, they're both math. They're both under the umbrella of math. But algebra and geometry are two completely different disciplines of math. And the same can be applied for weightlifting in the weight room. It's honestly just based on your goals. So hopefully the camera picks this up because I'm not gonna hit on every single detail, but I've personally trained as an athlete, both in high school and college. In high school, I was a multi-sport athlete. Now I graduated in 2013. So athletic training back then it just doesn't look like athletic training in 2026. So I have trained as an athlete, like I said, in high school and college. College, I was a redshirt football player. Don't think I was anything crazy. I played college football for 1 year, but I was training like a college athlete for a year. I had a really quality strength coach in my college years. So we learned a lot from him. Coach Boucher was kind of, I don't want to say old school, but he had the right kind of mindset for athletic training where there's a lot of trends when it comes to athletic training. And Coach Boucher stuck with what he knew while also implementing some trends in terms of maybe agilities and change of direction and stuff like that. So folks that are just getting into fitness, weightlifting, things like that, they all think the end goal is to look like Sam Sulek, the Trend Twins, Lean Beef Patty, whatever fitness influencer is big at the time. They think weightlifting, I'm gonna look huge. That is the only way. And it's couldn't be further from the truth, actually. So my goal on this video is just to break down bodybuilding versus athletic training and not to talk smack on one or the other, because me personally in my own training, I lean towards bodybuilding. Like I said, my base and my foundation on weightlifting is this. And without this, I couldn't get to the bodybuilding portion because athletic training is the #1 best foundation for the weight room and weightlifting. So, algebra, geometry, two completely different things under the same umbrella. Athletic training, bodybuilding, two completely different things under the umbrella of weightlifting. And more so, I find it in the female athletes that I train. They think that when they get in the weight room and they train like this, they automatically assume that they're gonna end up like some steroided out freak of nature. And the reality is the chemical makeup of the female body versus the male body, they are not anywhere remotely inclined to end up like that. I tell my female athletes all the time that even if you train all 4 years in high school, you go through, maybe you're a college athlete, you will not end up huge, massive, unable to move if your strength coach is qualified and they're training you on these principles. You will never, ever, ever look like a bodybuilder if you are training like this. When you think of Ronnie Coleman, Sam Sulek, all those people that I've mentioned before, they are on gear. They have so much heavy metals in their body. They have years of training like a bodybuilder. And when you are doing this, you're training to be faster, to jump higher, to change of direction, two totally different schools of thinking. So guys, I don't necessarily fight this battle as much with the male athletes that I train. They want to go towards that bodybuilding side. They want to look like the Chris Bumsteads of the world. They want to look like the Ronnie Colemans of the world. They want to look like that. A lot of times I find that I have to pull the male athletes back and say, hey, we're doing this. We're not doing a bunch of barbell curls. We're not doing a bunch of leg extensions. We are doing athletic training. So just briefly, I want to go over some of the core principles of athletic training. Now, every athletic coach, strength coach is going to view things a little bit differently, but this is just the baseline of what it looks like to be trained like an athlete. So the goals, obviously, like I touched on, you want to run really fast. You want to jump really high. You want to be able to change direction. So anytime you see COD, that's not Call of Duty, that's change of direction. So in the strength and conditioning world, whenever you see COD, change of direction. And then obviously you want to get stronger, and you will get stronger with athletic training. But again, you're not going to gain the mass of a bodybuilder. Guys, if you do years and years and years of hardcore bodybuilding and maybe you get on some gear, yeah, after years and years of it, you will start to look like that. But the female body will never get like that, especially if you're not on any type of performance enhancing things. So, as I said, the goals, two things I want to touch on: lower injury risk and then prehab. So you think of sports, primarily baseball with like Tommy John in the elbow, maybe basketball, cross country even, sports that take a lot of repetition. You think of baseball, softball, overhand throwing, pitching in baseball, things like that. Prehab is super important. Resistance band work, that's stuff you're not going to get in bodybuilding. If you're training like a bodybuilder and you're a baseball player, for example, you are going to have a tough time with joint health. You're going to have a tough time with tendon health. So bodybuilding also runs into the problem of overuse injuries because you're focusing on isometric movements over and over and over again. And I don't want to touch too much on bodybuilding because that'll be the second half of the video. So we're going to stay focused on athletic training. So when you are training like an athlete, I don't want to say you never get hurt, and I don't want to say there's never catastrophic injuries such as broken bones, such as torn ACLs, but the occurrence of that happening dramatically decreases. And especially if you're training year round, if you don't take summers off, if you're enrolled in a strength and conditioning class with a qualified athletic trainer, athletic coach, I should say, you're going to be pretty good. You're going to be checking off all the boxes. Now, if you're an athlete and you are afraid of the weight room, or maybe for whatever reason you don't trust your coach, or maybe you're hearing things from your home life like you don't need the weight room, if you're an athlete and you take your sport serious, you are going to be in the weight room and you're going to find ways to get stronger, run faster, jump higher, because this only benefits you. If you aren't doing this and you're an athlete, you are so far behind. Just to stay on average with everyone else, you need to be doing this year round. And that is just simply to be on par with everyone else. What you do beyond this, how much practice time you do on your own, that's on you. That's going to be the separator. But if you don't do this year round, you are already falling behind your teammates, you're falling behind your competitors, and you will get injured more. And I've been around sports, the weight room enough that the kids that don't take this serious and they half-heartedly do stuff, they're the ones that are getting hurt. They're the ones that are struggling on their teams. They're the ones that struggle with confidence. If you do this year round, you will be average. When I say that, I don't mean, well, gee, if I do all this work year round and I'm just average, why would I do that? That just means you're on par with everyone else. If there's a straight line here and you're doing this and everyone's doing this, you're here. What you do beyond this and what you do, the training you do on your own, the film study you do on your own, your nutrition, how much sleep you get, that's what's going to separate you. So I'm going to try really hard not to get on these huge tangents, but I don't feel like people know the difference between bodybuilding and athletic training. I see a whole lot of videos on how to be a bodybuilder and how to do that. I've gone to clinics, I've watched videos over athletic training and how they do it, but I've never seen someone just break both of them down and simply describe what they are and the benefits to both. So what it looks like for athletic training, it is compound movements. So you think of your squat, your back squat, your front squat. You think about your hang clean, power clean, hang snatch, bench press, incline bench press, deadlifts, things that are multi-joint compound movements, meaning you're working multiple muscle groups at one time. You're not just isolating one muscle group. Sprinting, jumping, change of direction. Think of more your agility drills. Think of testing your broad jump, your 40 time, your 3-cone, your pro agility, all that good stuff. And then competition, this right here, competition more than anything, is something bodybuilding cannot, I don't want to say compete against, and athletic training just has a unique way because you're in a team setting, you're in a class setting, you're around other people, so that offers competition. It offers extrinsic motivation. Me competing against my teammate to see who can hang clean more once max week comes around. Or I want to jump higher than my friend, or I think I can run a faster 40 than my friend. It offers a unique way to compete against other people that bodybuilding can't. You think of bodybuilding, it's just you get up on stage and you're competing in just certain body parts. Whereas this, if you're maybe a smaller individual and you're not as strong, you can still compete and beat bigger guys or gals in change of direction drills, jumping, sprinting. Everybody has strong points with athletic training. And to a certain degree, genetics don't play as big of a role in athletic training as you would see in bodybuilding. And then progressive overload, bodybuilding, a lot of times they're so focused on 3 sets of 12 or 5 sets of 12 or your last set to failure. And a lot of times the only way they do progressive overload is through their weight. You'll sometimes see bodybuilders that will do progressive overload with sets and reps, but that's where athletic training comes into play. Their progressive overload does percentages based upon your max. They do sets and reps, and then they will do maybe a different variation of a lift. So progressive overload, you're not going to get stronger, you're not going to get faster without progressive overload. And this is how you stop plateaus. Bodybuilding, powerlifting, a lot of times you get progressive or you don't get progressive overload and you get big plateaus. I'm stuck at 315 on bench. I'm stuck at 185 on hang clean. A lot of times you'll get those big plateaus because they're not using percentages, they're not changing up their sets and reps, and they're not using different variations of movements. So that's another positive to athletic training. And then over here on the benefits, like what do you get out of athletic training? What are the positives? Number one, you're going to get bigger, faster, stronger. When I say bigger, I don't mean bodybuilding bigger. I just mean your stature is going to get a little bit bigger. Your shoulders may get a little bit wider. You may get a bigger chest, or maybe your calves are developing to be a little bit bigger. So when we say bigger, faster, stronger, that's a term that came around the 90s from Nebraska. Their powerlifting coach, they were huge in the 90s when they were just dominating everybody. They were doing sprints. They were training like athletes, change of direction drills. That was their big phrase, bigger, faster, stronger. And so obviously athletic training, you're going to get the faster part. You're going to get more athletic. So when we say bigger, faster, stronger, don't think of bodybuilding bigger. Think more defined. And then your foundational movements. So whatever long-term goal you have in the weight room, athletic training gives you the best foundation out of any weightlifting method, bar none, because you get compound movements. Your compound movements, once you do those, can lead to other types of isometric movements. You learn how to move through athletic training, through hang clean, through squats that are below parallel, not to, but below parallel. You learn positive ways to train your body. And then the movement, you're just more athletic. You can change direction. You have better balance. You jump higher. Your coordination is better through athletic training. And then obviously we talked a little bit with the overuse stuff, but the injury prevention is huge for athletic training. Your injuries will go down. I'm not going to say they don't happen. I'm not going to say catastrophic injuries don't happen, but your soft tissue injuries, they go way down. When something catastrophic does happen, ACL injury, something like that, your return time is quicker. And then the aesthetic examples. So when people think of weightlifting, they automatically assume bodybuilding. They automatically assume you're going to be huge, jacked. Some people think that looks disgusting. That's not what this is. And this will never, ever, ever look like bodybuilding. Think of your current college athletes. Think of your current pro athletes. They all look pretty lean. Their muscles are defined. And then your posterior chain, so your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves, those are going to be very developed. And that's where you get your speed, your change of direction, your height and your jumping. It all comes from your posterior chain. And then obviously the last part of the aesthetic is if you pair this training with good nutrition, good sleep habits, you're going to have a good core. You're going to have a strong core. Your obliques, your abdomen, you're most likely, again, it depends on your nutrition, but if you take your nutrition serious, you'll have abs. Okay, so that is the basic, very, very basic rundown of athletic training. I trained like this from my 8th grade year through college, so well over 5 years, and this is where I got my foundation. I had pretty good strength coaches in high school, and then obviously my college strength coach was the best one that I've been around, and I learned a lot from Coach Boucher. So please, when you think of weightlifting, there are different schools, and maybe I'm preaching to female athletes here more than anything on term of aesthetic. When you're in the weight room with a quality strength and conditioning athletic training coach, you will not look like some genetic freak that you're just bulked up. If you have a coach that you trust and you look at their athletes that are now seniors and you see how they look, that's how you're going to look. You're not going to look like Sam Sulek. You're not going to look like any type of bodybuilder that's been doing it for years and that's on the gear and has been doing questionable things in terms of performance enhancing drugs. So that is athletic training. I'll see you in a quick second. I'm going to flip the board over and go into bodybuilding. Okay, moving into bodybuilding. So this is the current discipline of weightlifting that I currently train with. So personally, I train more bodybuilding style with my athletes that I train up at the school and all the schools I've worked in. We do athletic training and we very rarely, if ever, venture into bodybuilding. But every year I'll sit my athletes down and explain the differences between bodybuilding and athletic training. I just don't want them to automatically assume, oh, I'm a freshman in high school. If I start lifting right now in 2 weeks, I'm gonna look like Ronnie Coleman. So I think it's super important for anybody who's getting into weightlifting, fitness, to understand these two different disciplines of the weightlifting umbrella. And there are more than just these two, but I feel like these two are the most widely debated and I guess maybe easiest to confuse. So bodybuilding, the goals. The thing I like about bodybuilding, it's just simple. It's straightforward. It's how disciplined are you willing to be. So the goals, you want to gain mass, you want to get as big, you want to get each muscle head as big as you can. You just want to gain mass and just get jacked. You want to look like the Hulk, basically. You want to lose body fat, so you're focusing on body composition. And I think that's good for everyone when in moderation and you're doing it in a healthy way, not going on huge cuts like you think about maybe a wrestler, since I'm standing in our wrestling room, but you think about a wrestler, maybe they gotta make weight on Saturday morning and it's Friday night and I gotta work 2 pounds of water weight off. Bodybuilding is not like that to a certain degree until you start getting closer to your shows and your competitions. But for the most part, it is losing body fat, gaining lean muscle mass and getting as big as you can, and then muscle definition. If you guys have watched my shorts or videos in the past, I talk about the different muscle heads. Bodybuilding just does a good job of hitting specific muscle heads, like for your quad, your rectus femoris, that line down the middle of your quad. They just have a really dialed in way of hitting a short head on a bicep or a long head on a tricep. That's kind of why I appreciate bodybuilding. I don't suggest it for everyone, but I'm a younger guy, I'm in my early 30s, so I can train like this because, well, I'm not an athlete anymore. I'm a retired athlete and I can do a little bit more specific lifts for each muscle head. So going into like what it looks like training wise, they're more so isometric movements. They do hit compound movements. They will squat, they will bench, but they also have machine usage. So like bicep preacher curls on a machine or a leg press. So they can target individual muscle heads. So those two kind of go hand in hand, working individual muscle heads through machines, whereas it's hard to hit individual muscle groups with compound lifts. So if your lateralis on your quad is struggling and you're an athlete, it's going to be hard to pinpoint that through those compound movements. It'll increase the overall size of your quad, but if you need to target that lateralis later in life, bodybuilding may be an avenue that you can explore to help build lacking muscle heads. So they go on cuts, bulks. So that's a common phrase. This is one of the parts of bodybuilding that I'm still kind of up in the air on. You see fitness influencers have video series on how they're on the cut, now how they're on the bulk, and they're going through shows and they're going through their yearly cycle of off season, in season, coming up on their show. They go through cuts and bulks and their weight varies quite a bit. So you could have someone weighing 245, but on show day, they're down in the low 200s. I don't know the weight classes. I don't like compete in bodybuilding. So I'm giving you a rough estimate of how that looks, what their thought process when it comes to cuts and bulks. So their bulking is to gain their muscle, to gain their mass, and then their cut is to lose the body fat. So that's when you hear like body composition, it ties into cuts and bulks based upon where they are in their season. If they're in season, off season, cut, bulk, body composition is huge, huge, huge for bodybuilding. They're a little bit more rigid on their sets and reps. So maybe your parents or maybe you trained in the 90s and 80s, 3x12, that's like your go-to. That's what you do on everything. It's kind of interesting when I go to different schools. Maybe I'm at a wrestling meet or something and I sneak in their weight room and I kind of look what's going on because I just want to see what other people are doing. And I just see, maybe I'll see the old school whiteboard up in their weight room and I just see barbell curls, 3 sets of 12, cable curls, 3 sets of 12, lat pull downs, 3 sets of 12, all these isometric moves at 3x12 or 5x12. They're a little bit more rigid on their sets and reps. Part of that is because Jay Cutler, who was a famous bodybuilder in the 2000s, he came up when Ronnie Coleman was really big, but he was huge on sets of 12 or reps of 12. He may play a little bit with 4 sets of 12, 5 sets of 12, but usually his reps stop at 12. So progressive overload, we talked a little bit with the athletic training. Progressive overload is a little bit more challenging to hit in bodybuilding just because they do stick a little bit more to the something by 12 sets and reps. And then cardio for fat loss. With athletes, you are burning calories all the time through competition, through practice, through the weight room. So if you're a committed athlete, you're in the weight room, and then you have practice. Those are 2 big opportunities to burn calories. So you don't necessarily have to focus on cardio unless it's sport specific. I'll use wrestling as an example just because that's what I coach and that's what I know. Cardio is big for wrestling too, but we also use it for fat loss and we use it for water weight loss. So if you're in a sport, maybe like a football or baseball, softball, volleyball, this isn't necessarily as big in today's world. Now, if you played football in the 90s, early 2000s, back in the good old days, coaches just did this for mental toughness. That's all they did this for. So bodybuilding, more uniquely in the weightlifting space, focuses on cardio, and that's something I'm getting a little better at as I'm getting deeper into bodybuilding. Again, I don't compete. I'm not a pro bodybuilder. I don't ever want to be a pro bodybuilder. It just allows me to gain muscle mass, which that's my goal, and it teaches me a little bit about nutrition and macros. So heading on to the next thing there, benefits. So one of the many reasons why I like bodybuilding for my age is the benefit of diet. It teaches you about macros. It teaches you tracking protein, fats, carbs, what is good fats, what is bad fats, what is lean protein as opposed to more like a protein powder. So I feel like if you get into bodybuilding for any amount of time, the more you invest into it with your time, not money, but the more you invest in time, the more you become a little bit more comfortable with your diet and how to do it properly. Again, if you're getting close to competition day, there are things that people do to lose that little extra amount of water weight that isn't necessarily healthy, and I don't condone that. So that part of bodybuilding, like the extracurricular performance enhancing stuff that comes with bodybuilding, I don't condone that. I don't push that. I don't do that. That's something that if I had to change one big thing about bodybuilding, it would be the come close to competition time, how you diet down, how you lose some of that water weight, and then obviously the drug use, that's no bueno. So split variety, I kind of went on a tangent on the diet, but split variety, we've talked on the channel before about bro split, push-pull legs, upper, lower, everything every day, just at a lower volume. It allows you to pick a split that works best for you and your schedule. Maybe you're not a fan of the bro split, which is just targeting one muscle group one day at a time. And then maybe it just doesn't work with your schedule. I don't know. You can do push-pull legs. Maybe you feel better on push-pull legs. Or maybe you feel better and you just want a simple upper body day, lower body day, rest. Upper, lower, rest. The split variety is completely up to you and it's unique. And I've seen people at the top of the sport do different things. Seth Feroce, who I'm kind of a fan of, and I like just his mindset stuff, he was a bro split guy back in the day. C-Bum, he was more of a push-pull legs, like the current trend of bodybuilders and that fitness influencing space. A lot of them are push-pull legs just because they travel a lot, they have a busy schedule, so they feel like they are getting more benefit out of push-pull legs. For me and what I do, I just do bro split because I like just the intensity of hammering one muscle at a time. I feel like I get more growth out of it, and that's just what works for me. Discipline, it honestly, through the nutrition, through the sleeping, through your splits, you have to be disciplined to have any type of success Whether you're just looking for the aesthetics of it, or if you're looking to compete in bodybuilding, you have to be a disciplined individual. There is no shortcuts in this form of weightlifting. So discipline, I feel like it just teaches you as you go. If you're not a very disciplined person, if you don't have much self-control with your diet, you're gonna struggle being a bodybuilder. I'm just being straight up with you, because how you look is the level of your discipline. You know, if you're just getting into it, you're not gonna look great. You may not look how you wanna look right away, but you can develop into that. And then simple, like bodybuilding is a very, very simple sport, hobby, whatever you view it as. It is super simple. Whereas athletic training, there is a lot of nuance that goes on to this. Bodybuilding, if you have a super strict diet, if you're good with your sleep, and then if you have your split locked in, like there is not much to this. It is just go, figure out what works for you, and just keep spamming it. So the aesthetic, and this is what, when people get into weightlifting, I always think of the freshman kids that I see when they come into the high school. They all think weightlifting, they're gonna look like this. The funny thing is like, I'll get a little, just as an example, I'll get a freshman that comes in that weighs 100 pounds. Maybe their parents think they're gonna look like Ronnie Coleman after 2 weeks. If you're not on gear, if you haven't been training like a bodybuilder for years and years and years, you will never, ever, ever come close to looking like these guys or gals. I'll kind of equate it like this, or talk about it like this. If you start when you're young, weightlifting, and maybe you're brought up in the bodybuilding lifestyle or discipline of bodybuilding where you're on machines all the time and you've been doing it since you were young, you can get to look pretty freaky. But again, if you're not on the performance enhancing side of things, kind of the dark side of bodybuilding, you'll never get to that. The body competition, the natural hormones in the body will never, ever, ever allow you to look like an open bodybuilder, ever. And I always find it funny when the female athletes come in and they say, well, my dad says I'm just gonna get bulky. That couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth if you're training like an athlete. If you're training like this and you aren't on gear, you still won't look like that. You'll get jacked, but you're not gonna become like the Hulk. And so that is kind of the breakdown of athletic training, of bodybuilding. Again, I personally train like this nowadays, and growing up, I trained like an athlete. So I've seen both sides of this, and I've trained both sides. I think there's benefit to both, just dependent upon what your goals are. So I won't talk trash on either one. My one caveat to all of this, and I always tell the athletes that I train this, if you are an athlete and you compete as an athlete, you play sports, this is not the avenue to go down. You will get hurt. Injuries will happen. You'll have tendon tears. You'll be tearing your ACL. If you're an athlete and you just go in and train leg extensions because that's what you see on TikTok, that's what you see on IG Reels, and you just go in and just try to get your quads as big as you can, and you always neglect your hamstrings, and then you go out and you try to do something athletic, you're going to be tearing MCL, ACL, meniscus issues. You'll run into overuse injuries. So if you're an athlete and you train like this on your own, maybe you do train with your coach in the weight room year round, but then you go off and do this. This is just as harmful as training like an athlete is beneficial. When you overlap these two as an athlete, that's when things get pretty negative and you start running into overuse injuries. Maybe your elbow hurts all the time because you're too busy doing machine curls and you're getting bicep tendonitis, and then you're having to go and throw and pitch multiple times a week. You just, again, if there's one caveat to bodybuilding, it is not beneficial for athletes whatsoever. Just stick to the athletic training. You can look jacked, you can look super cut training like an athlete. You can look great training like an athlete. You look at the college athletes, the pro athletes, they're lean, They don't have much body fat on them. As an athlete, if you just eat well, if you stick to lean protein, if you have vegetables and fruit with every meal, you're gonna be looking fine. Stay away from the pop, stay away from the drink and all that stuff. But as you get to my age, if you're older, if you're a little bit more intense with the weights, maybe this is your avenue. I'm an intense person. I get super competitive with things, and this is my avenue to kind of release that. So again, there are multiple ways to weightlift. I'm just trying to end the stigma or the preconceived notion of, if I'm gonna start weightlifting, I'm gonna look like Sam Sulek. That couldn't be further from the truth. And again, if you grew up in the 90s or 80s, that's kind of what everyone was trying to look like. They're trying to look like Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, people like that. But as knowledge is increasing, as videos are out there, I just want to end the stigma of people that are nervous getting into weightlifting looking like this. Again, you will never look like this if you're not on gear, if you haven't been doing it for years and years, training like a bodybuilder. So hopefully this helps somebody. I can nerd out about this stuff, obviously. This is gonna be a long form video, and I know some people will really enjoy learning the differences, and then some people may just want the bare bones type of thing. I'm gonna attempt to make a short out of this, but we'll see if we can get that done. But I'll be back in the dojo this week. Expect a chest and bicep video tomorrow, and then we will get back into like our normal schedule. So who knows how much I'll whip out the whiteboard and kind of explain stuff to people. I'm trying to walk the fine line of being like super educational, but also kind of like maybe personal training, maybe vlog style of workouts. Who knows what this will develop into, but hopefully you learned something. As always, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed learning about this stuff, and thank you for watching.